Hello and welcome to Tonight a Date from the RSGB. Construction's a very popular part of our hobby, and as we will see, it doesn't always involve circuit boards and microchips. Our three guest presenters this evening are all award winners from previous RSGB construction competitions, and we'll be finding out more about the competition later on. But we start by meeting David Law, G0LBK, to see what it takes to make from scratch your own dish to have a go at Earth, Moon, Earth, or EME communications. And if you're watching this on Monday the 11th of December, then this is live, and you can ask questions and make comments on either YouTube chat or BATC messaging at any time during the presentation or straight afterwards. Please include your first name and call sign if you have one within every message. And note that you can make this video stream fill your screen on most devices, usually by double clicking on the picture or pressing the full screen button. So now, welcome to Tonight a Date, David. We look forward to finding out how you went about making your own EME dish.
Yeah, good evening, David. Good evening, everybody, and thank you. I'm just going to give you a short presentation about making my dish. I built this with no intention of entering this competition last year. It was almost an afterthought. I saw an appeal for further entries. I thought, well, why not? I've built it, I put a lot of effort into it. So I put an entry in, and to my surprise, later on, I got some news that I'd actually won the competition, which was fantastic. So I'll give you a short presentation now about building it. It's just really my story about building it. And I'll give an overview of what it entails, and also that it just entails basically simple tools, nothing complicated. And I'm an amateur, and this is an amateur construction. So you can see the presentation, yeah. So basically, I was looking at building a dish. I want to get on EME on 23 centimeters. Dishes are available from time to time. You can buy a dish, but as you can see from the slide, they're more expensive than what I want to pay. So the only option left was to make a dish. Keep hitting the right key instead of the left one. Right, so I looked at other dishes. RS Ham Design make one, manufactured in Germany. I see photographs of that, it kind of gave me ideas. For the parabolic curve, there are tools available free of charge on the internet. One's called Surprise Parabola Calculator, which I'll show you about shortly. Produced a template to make the curvature of the dish, which I'll show you shortly. I had to go up making one with round tube, which was a complete failure because it was too floppy, basically. It didn't work, wasn't rigid enough. So I made Mark II, which is the competition entry. So bending them accurately. How do you bend a parabolic curve in a piece of aluminium accurately, repeatedly, simply? I thought about these sort of 3-point bending rollers you can buy, but they're a couple of £100, and they're okay for making constant curves, but not parabolic curves where the curve changes throughout the shape. So made a template on a piece of wood, and then I had an idea. So basically it was a piece of kitchen worktop, which you got free of charge. Put a square hole in it, basically a round hole, chiseled it out, made it square. I put a guide on the side of it, a piece of aluminium angle, as you can see, and a bearing plate underneath. Basically that just takes the pressure off the worktop and stops it breaking and distorting. Template, basically a piece of wood on the floor, bit of MDF, and draw a series of lines. This item here is basically the printout from the parabola calculator, and I could just mark out my X and Y coordinates in order to make a curve, a parabolic curve. See on the right-hand picture, using the piece of kitchen worktop and just applying pressure gently until you can just feel the aluminium yield at the points along the length which had been marked out in a marker pen. very carefully. You can keep popping it back onto the template, a little bend, and adjusting it. And that's the type of accuracy you get, which was within 1mm, which far surpasses what I needed in terms of accuracy, which would have been about 2.5 centimeters for a dish to work. Obviously, the whole dish has got to be tied to a hub in the center, so I've allowed for the hub. The piece of wood there just basically represents that. Marking out the hub, simple marking tools, nothing complicated at all. Holes in the ribs were repeatable, so basically it was a piece of aluminium with 2 holes in it and just drill through. Then you can do 16 or 32 or whatever. So all marked out by hand. Other tools I used was basically drilling and tapping. If you've not got any taps, they're available quite cheaply and they're very easy to use. And aluminium is a nice forgiving material to use it on. This is part of the hub from Mark 1, which I abandoned, but the Mark 2 was made in a similar manner. And basically I made a circle by roughly cutting it out with a jigsaw and then putting it on a piece of wood, rolling it around a screw on an axis with a flap disc on a grinder at the side, rotate that, turns the rather rough circular shape into a nice circle. Again, no lathe involved or anything like that. Jumbo cutting, this is a beast. It's a chop saw. This is a particularly good one, but I like, when I buy tools, I like to buy a good tool. A cheap chop saw would be perfectly okay to cut aluminium, provided it got the correct blade. It's more useful than chopping hundreds of lengths of aluminium with a hacksaw. It gives square, repeatable cuts, and it saves you a lot of time. So worth borrowing or using one of those. So just rib on its own is not very stiff when it gets to 2 meters long. So you've got to stiffen the thing up. And the way to do that is to make another rib at the back, join it all together with gusset plates and pot rivets. Particular pot rivets are M4. Again, these were made in batches like this and affixed using a jig. The template had become a jig. So there we go. That's first 2 ribs made and offered up to the center hub. And you can see it looks rather large. I was quite surprised. I had a reasonable sized garden, but I thought that might be pushing it a little bit. Luckily, I was moving house anyway, so I didn't move house because of the dish, but it was helpful. While I was waiting to move house, I made a smaller dish using the same method, a 2 meter dish just for tropo work and a couple of little feeds. And this is a picture of my dog. And some people thought it was quite funny because they thought the dog had fur before it stood in front of the dish. So here we are, kit of parts, ready to move house. There we are, 16 ribs. So you're kind of getting an idea about the amount of work that goes into something like this. You think there's 5, 10 pot rivets just in that one little part of that one rib. But again, it's done. I actually added another interim rib later just to give it a little bit more stiffness because I had some aluminium left over. And there's the thing coming together now. So you can see it's rather large. And this is my new house. So this is maybe a year later when I get to this stage. So I'm starting to construct it and putting it all together. And you can see the roll of the hub. The ribs are just bolted on with stainless steel M6 bolts that you can get from Screwfix quite cheaply. This part is the only part that I had to have made by somebody else because this area is a weld. And welding aluminium is quite difficult because you have to get sufficient penetration on the weld. If you've only got a little bit of penetration, then you can get all sorts of problems, and it's better left to a professional to do it. And you need a TIG welding set, which I've just not got. The weld cost me 20 quid, which was the minimum would have cost from a little welding jobbing shop in Sheffield. So not too expensive. There's the hub detail, which I've just explained. And this item here is basically how the hub connects to the rotator. This particular rotator gives you azimuth and elevation as you need for them all. And on the left side, you can see I've tallied up the amount of rivets. There's 1,088 rivets being set into that piece of kit that I've built, 132 bolts, and I reckon it's take me at least 200 hours to make it. So there's a lot of work goes into it. It's not really a project for the faint-hearted, but it's not difficult. It's all just a sum of parts. That's all it is. It's just time. There's the end detail. I'd not designed this part of it until I got to the new house, and then I thought, well, I'm going to put a rib around the outside. How am I going to do that? Obviously, you can't put it flat to the end. So I made a small bracket on each rib, 16 of those. Basically, it's made out of 18mm by 3mm flat aluminium, bent just in a vise with an adjustable spanner. Simple as that. And there's aluminium inserts in there that fits into the square tube with a bolted here, and then drilled and tapped with some small M6 bolts to hold this in place. Made it up as I went along. I didn't have solid works. I didn't have even a very good plan on paper. It was just basically making it and then trying to sort of think about the next hurdle as I was building it. There was no plan. That's the honest truth of the matter. So here we go. It's coming along even further. This takes a long time to do. Causes you a lot of problems because it cuts your arms all over the place. It's basically galvanized animal mesh used for cages. And although it's not ideal, initially it's just tie wrapped into position, and these petals had to be cut individually and placed and tie wrapped. There's a lot more tie wraps eventually than this. Tie wraps are not ideal because of UV degradation, but nonetheless, I wanted to get on the air, and I needed to get on. The mesh is 10mm square, which should, with the accuracy of this, make the dish usable right up to 9cm long. I'm on 23 centimeters, so everything's a bit looser. Right, this is what the dish is mounted on. And after the 70-mile-an-hour winds we had the other day, it's still there. So that's one thing. But here we go, 2 water containers that window cleaners use. They provide the weight. Reason I didn't go for a concrete base in the ground is twofold. One, that this is portable more or less. With effort, it could be moved somewhere else in the garden. Secondly, the water table here in Lincolnshire is quite high, and therefore you start digging a hole, it'll fill with water, but it's not ideal for putting concrete down in a DIY stance. This is a bit of old lighting tower. I managed to get 3 sections of that for 100 quid, and I sold 2 of the sections on for 100 quid, so it cost me nothing. There's a slew drive rotator on the top. It's not a SPID rotator, that's an error. And there the dish is in position without the feed, so it's just been put up. But you get an idea of the size. I have planning permission for this. It was gained quite easily through Lincolnshire Council with no difficulty at all. So I was quite pleased about that. I did that as soon as I moved to the house. And that's my shack, which is a shed, basically. And there it is with the feed. The feed basically, the signal basically goes into the feed and reflects off the dish to the moon. And I presume this is pointing at the moon. This item here is a preamplifier, which is right on the feed point, so there's no feed loss as such. Telling you about the feed, I had to hold the feed on to the dish. Basically, I've used here a fiberglass tube with a slot cut in it. And luckily, this type of septum feed's made out of square aluminium and slid basically into the slot and down. So it negates the need for a triangular set of rods holding the feed on in a traditional way. It's quite dangerous, that. So be very careful if you're anticipating making something like that. In the box, which is mounted just below the dish, the side of the dish, is the amplifier. Again, it's placed there rather than in the shack to reduce feeder loss. Basically, feeder loss is important on 23. You just lose so much. It's the feed is half-inch thick, but you still, every bit counts. It's placed in this cabinet to stop it getting moist if it's raining, and it houses a single LDMOS device which will provide 400 watts of power. This item here is a power supply running about 50 volts, and it puts out a fair amount of power. As you can see, that's a 200 watt scale, but it's dramatic. It looks like that. Improvements since then, I've added this choke onto the feed just to make things a little bit better. And you can see this, to save this sagging under the weight, there's just two simple guides to the edge of the dish. Again, preamplifier box. Does it work? Well, the one good thing about 23 centimeters and other bands is that the sun's always there and the sun's noisy. So we can point the dish at the sun. So basically here, I'm not pointing at the sun, turning the rotator onto the sun, and it gives me a level. And using the SDR, I can look at the differences in noise level between seeing the sun and not seeing the sun. And on that particular day when the sun was with an SFI of this strength, basically the noise the sun's producing is this. I measured 17 dBs of the sun noise, which basically it shows that the dish is working and shows that the dish is working correctly. Does it really work in the real world? Yeah, of course it does. In 12 months, I've worked 700 EME contacts of the moon, and I'm not on all the time. Single Yagi stations, I've worked people on sideband, a bit of slow scan television here being sent to me, probably obviously early 23. I made the first to Singapore contact on 23 centimeters. 296 individual stations have been worked in all continents, 56 DXCC and 40 states, and that's growing month on month. There's an audio file to be played there. I'm not sure if you're getting that or not, but excellent. That's basically a sideband contact. Let me know when it's finished, David. I can't hear it all right. No problem. Sorry about the long introduction of right those. Thank you. What you heard there was a check station giving me a 5 and 5 report on sideband via the moon. That's my shack, just in case you're wondering. Ubiquitous 9700. That's been modified with a Leo Bodmer board just to make it frequency stable, as a lot of the contacts are on digital modes, Q65, which you can see going off here. This is basically the reflector, and this is tracking the moon automatically, so I don't have to touch anything. So that's basically the business end where I sit. Right, there you go. That's my story. I'd just like to thank the following people before I go who've given me advice on various things as we've gone along. And they're the people: G3AAF, G4IDR, G4CCH, DDK, LTF, XDY, and G4YTL. been fantastic all the way through. It's a great community on 23 centimetres EME, and people look after each other and help each other as much as in other aspects of amateur radio. So there you go. If you want to know more, I'm on Twitter and it's at G0LVK. There's quite a lot of documentation that as the things progressed on there, and that's me appearing quite happy. So there you go, David. That's my presentation. Thank you.
Lovely, David. Thank you. Yeah, that was a wonderful picture there. I was thinking I wasn't misseeing that, was I? Anyway, thank you very much for telling your story there. If you haven't asked any questions or made any comments yet and you want to for David, then please do it now on either YouTube chat or the BATC Messenger, and I'll be sure to read those to David. We've actually had one comment, very topical actually, because I want to just briefly explain for people watching who've not seen the news that Ofcom have published their response to the consultation which was held earlier this year about their proposals, and actually we're going to give you a link to a useful RSGB page at the end of this. But anyway, in the context of that, I mention it because Steve M7DPV says, will the changes announced today bring a new upsurge in interest in construction? And I think, although I haven't read the detail of everything, I think that basically means that, M7 Foundation and Intermediate will be able to build more and use and transmit more than they could have done before. So do you think that's a good thing? I mean, you're obviously a G0, David, but I mean, do you think this is going to encourage people to maybe do more with construction?
Yeah, I don't see why not. I've constructed many things, and I'm sure most amateurs do. I've built amplifiers, and I'm never been professionally involved in radio or anything like that. But I think it's crucial to the hobby. I mean, I really hope it will, and it looks like we're retaining 23 SEMs now as well, which is another big important piece of news this week on amateur radio. So. Yeah, long may it continue. I really hope it bolsters people's enthusiasm and allows them to build, which I always thought was a ridiculous rule. But there you go. That's my opinion on things.
Well, the news is in, as they say. Yes, I mean, one of the things I was going to ask you, I don't know if anybody else thought that, but when I saw the size of that dish, it's huge, isn't it? 4 meters across. I wondered if you had to move house because of the dish. Which came first? Did you have to move first, or what?
We were moving house.
Oh, right.
First, but the dish would have gone up wherever we moved to. Well, hopefully, if I got permission for it. I kept back tentatively because of the planning permission aspect. But I got permission for that and also regular mast. And I don't have a massive estate or anything. It's just a smallish garden, but it's big enough, and as you can see at the back, it's great. I'm not overlooked, so there's no real pressure from people. So
no, it's a good point. Thank you. I've got a question now from Ian G0CNN, who says, is there a source of WSJT-X sound files that can be used to test the station EME software settings? He wants to confirm that he's got the laptop set up correctly before freezing outside with the Yagi, he says.
Yes, they are available. I think the guy's call sign, the guy who wrote WSJTX, is it KA1GT? I'm not sure, but they certainly are available because they do testing with them from time to time. But yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you contact him or contact me, and I'll manage to obtain some for him. Not a problem.
Good. Okay. Thank you very much. Actually, Ian adds to that. Extremely professional, David. Well done. Great presentation too. And liking the open countryside aspect to the new house as well. That's from Ian as well.
Thank you, Ian.
Well, thank you very much, David. We'll be joined together again right at the end as well. So if anybody has any more questions for you, they can ask it then. But for a moment, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Now, our next guest is Jenny Curtis, M7JNY, who's going to tell us all about their rise to a challenge to make an emergency vertical antenna. As before, you can ask questions and make comments at any time during Jenny's presentation, and I'll read them to her at the end. But so welcome now, Jenny, to Tonight at 8. I think we'll need to unmute possibly, Jenny. Sorry.
Oh, no, it is unmuted.
Oh, is it? Oh, we've got you now. Lovely. Okay,
Okay.
thank you. It's a bit more of a complicated program than normal because we have quite a few guests. Anyway, lovely to meet you. So tell us about your project. We've got some slides and things, I think, to play out, and we're fascinated to know, the story of how you got beginning with this construction.
Yeah, no problem. Well, much like David, I didn't originally do this for this competition, but again, when I saw this competition, I felt it really fit the bill. It was originally a DX Commander competition for an emergency vertical antenna, so I can't take the credit for the challenge in its own right. And actually, it was a friend of mine who told me about the challenge, and I decided to try and do a better job than he did. So I was very, very new. I had only just qualified, got my foundation license in the October. So this was sort of this time last year, was building it. And essentially the challenge was to just build a vertical antenna with no radio equipment. An emergency, what happens if all you've got is everything that's in your man drawer. So, none of your normal radio connections, nothing. Well, that was really easy for me because I'm a single mother. I have no man drawer, and all I had was, as on the first slide will show, this is my version of a man drawer, the first picture, some lovely pink wicker baskets with various cables in them and some pretty bags as well. It's just me and my daughter that live here, so pink's quite a theme here. So originally we were talking through with a friend, and he was talking about the challenge with the radials, and vertical antennas was just not something I was really aware of at that stage. I was very, very new to it all. And so the concept of, the amount of radials that you needed and being able to plug them all in and getting the length of those right, and showed me what he'd kind of built with his. And for some reason into my head just popped, if we just look at the picture on the next page, I suddenly realised I had this headphone splitter, which, got, room for 5 friends to share music. I don't have 5 friends, so I never really used it, but it was sat in my man drawers, pink baskets, for a long, long time. And I just started to think, okay, if I could sort of section that off, and what if we plugged into all of those bits? That's kind of the basis of the radials. And then I started to think, well, what happens if we put earphones into it? What happens if I just, instead of, getting all cables and what happens if I just plug earphones into it? And so had a go at that, and sort of built up various bits, looked through all my audio cables and just sort of built up lots and lots of radials. They weren't really quite the desired length because the earphones are not quite long enough, but I thought, well, we'll just kind of give it a go. So I kind of had that basis, and that was the idea for it. But then obviously I had to try and get this connected to the coax and to the rest of it. And obviously the other end of this is a male mini jack, and I had no female mini jacks anywhere. So I then had a good look through my toolbox, and on the next slide, I believe you can see, here we are. So I found a raw plug, one of these ones. I'm sure many of you have sworn. I don't know if it's just me that swears at these damn things, because most of the time they don't work. But I thought, well, actually, that's quite a good little socket. If I could pack it out with tin foil to get it really conducting well, and then shove the end of the headphone splitter in there, I've got myself a female mini jack connector. So I went about stuffing it all with tin foil, and as you can see, the coax is there. I'd split that all out, and I think probably on the next picture we've got just a few stages through as I've built it. So there you are, connected to the coax. So we've got it ready now to be able to plug the headphone splitter into it. So on the next photo, there we go, and now you can see that I've got a female mini jack connector suddenly. So that was all connected to the coax, and then I just needed to connect my element. I used just speaker wire for the element. It was obviously, speaker wire is stereo, so I just split it in half. So we just had the one and made it the length I needed, and then connected that, which I think you can see on the next picture. There we go. Yeah, just with an electrical connector, just connected. So that red part is now the element. I wrapped all of my female mini jack connector up in tape and stuff to try and make it a bit waterproof and keep it all sealed. And that was the basis of it. So I think on the next slide shows it out. Oh, yeah, there we go. Okay, and there we are with it all ready completed. So now all I needed to do was just connect up all the radials. to that headphone splitter, which I think is on the next slide now, probably out. Oh no, sorry, one more point before we get to that. So before I put it outside, I had one other issue with a vertical antenna. You kind of need to be able to get it vertical, and I kind of had no snake charmers and no trees around. So called on a good friend of mine, Mike Zero Whiskey Papa Delta, came round. He happens to have a really good bowling arm, which is helpful. So we got a tennis ball and we attached a fishing line to the end of it, and I'm stood behind here with the fishing line in my hand, and he chucked the ball over the roof, and we managed to get a rope over my roof. And as you can see there in the second picture, that is pulled it back over, and we suddenly had something that I could then get a vertical element up onto. So I then attached that, and I think the next slide is now it all out in the garden. There we go. So there it is with all the radials attached. So you can see I tried to get as many radials as I possibly could with a mix of phono leads and earphones and headphone splitters and goodness knows what, just tried to get as many out there as I could. And they are headphones, they are earphones all on the ends of those, spread it all out. And as you can see, the red element going up vertical. And so we plugged it all into the radio from there. And I think on the next slide probably shows there we are. So there's the vertical attached to my rope over my roof, which is still there now. Got two of them now. They're quite handy to have up there for hanging things. So, and I think that then we put it on the analyzer, which is on the next slide. Oh no, there's another one of it. Yeah. Well rehearsed this. So there it is out in the garden anyway. And yeah, we attached it to the radio and an analyzer on it. And the SWR was pretty good on it, considering I'd sort of guessed at the element a little bit. I was very, very new to this, so this was I was still getting my head around how to even use the analyzer, but we got some really, really good results on that. And then the next slides are on from there. So obviously, you've got to use everything in your man drawer, right? And this was around Christmas time, and it was an emergency vertical antenna challenge. And I thought, well, it might be quite useful to have it portable. So I thought it might be quite useful at this time of year to pop it all in a clutch bag. So, a Christmas event or something, I could take it with me just in case I, needed to contact somebody. So that was the end of the challenge, and that was then submitted. So, yeah, and then when I just saw the construction competition for the RSGB, I just thought, actually, this really fits the bill for this. And I was really quite proud of what I'd achieved, and I was keen to just sort of share it, and was blown away when I was selected as a winner for it. So thank you very much for that. But it was really, really enjoyable to build, and I love that challenge of you've got nothing, right? What can you make out of what you've got, and just have a bit of fun with it. So that was my construction.
Jenny, thank you very much. I mean, you're going to win, apart from winning it, I mean, you're full marks for improvisation, really, for everything that you used there. I've never thought of using one of those metal raw blocks to sort of use as a socket or anything like that, but it probably works quite well because there's a sort of springy bit, isn't there, to them, so to make a tight connection. They were really good. Indeed, we haven't got any specific questions for you yet from anybody, but if you have got some questions for Jenny, please do ask them right away. I mean, you're obviously going to enthuse and inspire others to have a go at making something almost just from scrap bits and pieces, your man drawer, as you said. And we've all got probably one of those, a box of junk and stuff like that. Have you got anything else in line? I mean, would you mind sharing with us? Have you got another idea for something else?
Not yet. I mean, the ironic thing is I've built that and I still haven't actually got my shack up together. So it's a bit of a time to try and get that sorted. So I think my next challenge really is like I said, I've got 2 ropes now over my roof, talking about maybe doing sort of just trying to get vertical doesn't work so well where I'm based, and we've had quite a few challenges with vertical. So looking at just trying to get some kind of loop going instead, and get that as high up onto the roof as possible, and try and get a really big sort of 40-meter loop going there. So that's the next challenge. It's not quite as exciting as that construction, but just getting my shack built would be good.
Jolly good. Well, Jenny, as I said, you're going to be inspiring a lot of people to see what they can do with some bits of, well, junk really that they've got lying around. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. We might see you later if anybody's got any other questions for you, but thank you very much for joining us for now.
Thank you, Dave.
Now, our last project presenter this evening is Colin Murray, GM for EAU. And unlike the mainly hardware projects so far, Colin developed the WATT software application, and WATT stands for Whisper Analysis and Traffic Tool. Please feel free to ask Colin questions during the presentation, and I'll read them to him at the end. So welcome to Tonight at 8, Colin.
Thank you, David, and good evening to everybody. I'm going to talk about the project that I developed. I think there's a common theme here that I didn't actually start out to enter this competition, but it kind of happened on the way, which seems to be a common theme here. So what I'm going to talk about here, and this is going to be a little bit different from the previous talks, I'll explain my journey as to how I got into the competition and the early idea I had about writing some software. I'll also briefly explain Whisper, that's the WSPR, so you know where I'm coming from. And then I'll talk about the software that I wrote with some difficulty, I might add. I'll cover the motivation to build some software, because I appreciate it is different from hardware and such like. I'll also talk about some of the problems of actually getting a project like this started. And finally, I'll explain the outcome, which, to give you the heads up, was quite successful. So I kind of rediscovered amateur radio 7 or 8 years ago, after a long gap of about 30 years, joined a local club, and I got started transmitting whisper type signals on headset bands. I'll explain what that is in a minute. Now this particular digital mode, at the time, the reporting tools are pretty simple and basic. You did the job, but not much more. But one thing you didn't really have was any sort of animation or replay. And the idea I sort of evolved was that we're all aware of the Met Office weather map with the rain going across the UK. But I thought if we could do the same sort of idea with these propagation signals on a map showing the time of day and the progression as the sun goes up, the sun goes down, and different propagations start to happen, that might be interesting. So I had my sort of project coming up now, as target project. I was going to build some sort of reporting tool. So that was in the back of my mind. I wanted to build some software in conjunction with sort of the hardware I tend to work with normally. So that was the start of this sort of challenge, if you like, but I wasn't really aware of any of the details. But I did decide there's lots of good software out there that's wonderful in terms of packages for presentation and so on, but I reckon that wasn't important here. I just wanted to actually process the data and find out how things are working. So I chose to base the whole lot on Microsoft Excel and standard spreadsheet and use the language that's inside that. And put the project into 3 chunks. Firstly, just a simple sort of spreadsheet type system running, where you could grab the data from a central database and then crunch it up using your own software skills in spreadsheets, and then take things from there. Because a lot of this sort of whisper type activity is to do with analysing how things are going for troposcatter or Earth, Moon, Earth, or whatever. So a simple sort of spreadsheet, and then I try and plot it on a map. And if all went well, I then try and animate it and make it actually into a moving video of some sort. So that was the plan. Very, very briefly, Whisper is one of the digital protocols that we have out there, the weak signal propagation reporter. Essentially, it's a beacon, and it sends a message out. Others receive that message, and then the response comes back through the internet to a central database. So it's a way of basically in real time sending a message out and getting a response back. And the way this thing works, it uses very precise 2-minute slots and starts at a particular even slot of time. And has a very fixed structure, very, very narrow bandwidth of 6 Hertz. And because of how the system works, it can resolve signals down to about -34 dBm. So it can bury right below the noise and pull out a signal. And consequence of that is it's a very, very slow baud rate that we're actually running. And behind the scenes, there's data on this sort of thing going back to 2009, and currently there's about 3 billion data points. So it's a huge amount of data if you wanted to analyze what happened last summer or last autumn or 5 years ago and such like. So there's lots of different analysis you could play with if that was what you were interested in. Typically for Whisper, it's medium wave and short wave, but we can go down to 23 sems. And it's primarily used to gauge propagation of one sort or another. But one side effect we have noticed, though, is that if you're in an area with lots of QRM and lots of interference, Whisper will still work, even if you don't hear anything else. So that can be useful at times. But also, in terms of the project construction part of the world, it's a project you can build on its own. The one I've got there is on the right. You can build that and operate it without any other amateur equipment. So it's a very straightforward project if you want to build something and get results. A typical use is to sit and listen for openings into different areas of the world. You can run this every minute or two and see what's happening. You send a signal, and if it comes back, you know that there's a propagation path of some sort. I've put together a very quick set of videos just to give you a flavor of the software. I'm going to show you, just run through these quickly. The first one's acquiring some data from the central database. So you can see the system working here. That's my call sign going in, picking any band at all and getting a number of records back. You can see it's a sort of spreadsheet-like tool, but there's lots of controls and buttons that let you do what you like. So you've got that data there to play with at any time. If you know your spreadsheets, you can cut and paste that and play with it. But you can also manipulate it with all the different buttons at the top. So there we're looking at different frequency bands and doing some filtering of some of the data. So in this case, we're filtering for France, and then we're looking at France to see the different distances involved. So you can see there in the last half hour or so, that propagation link was there. The next one, just if you have some data, you can present this on a map. So you're starting to visualize the data now, which can be quite useful. So there's world map, and there's the data. This was data from this afternoon. That's me at my QTH going out on HF. And that's me in Edinburgh. And those are the different areas. That link there highlighted, the data is there. It's a Spanish station down in the Canary Islands. So what I'm going to do is interrogate some data from there. So he's listening, he or she's listening. So put the call sign in, and then I'll query the main database. I'll pick maybe just 10 meters to see what's happening there. I'll get a couple of thousand records in. I'll look at the data. And you'll see a map in a moment with the information this site's gathering. So it's all being crunched up and analysed. And there we are. He's obviously got a good QTH up high somewhere, but he's going right around the world at different times, down to Australia, which is a path length of 9,000 miles on about 100 milliwatts. So that gives you a feeling of this sort of functionality that's available. There's a vast amount more of detail, but this is just to give you a flavour. One of the more exciting things is this is an animation where I've got one stored from earlier, which is a tracking of a pico balloon that's going around the planet. So I pulled the data in from a backup there. I'm now going to plot it on the world map. So there you can see the red dots are the actual balloon that's going around the world, broadcasting a little whisper signal every so often. And along the top, you can see a timeline. And in this case, it's about 13 days of data. And so the red dots are there, and that's a balloon. The blue dots are reporters, people that have heard the balloon. And what we're going to do now is actually animate this day by day. So day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6. You can see the balloon progressing along now. That's vastly speeded up for this demonstration, but you can drill down to half-hour periods if you want to see what's happening over the UK or elsewhere. So there we just pick one slot, and we picked a thing at random, which is somewhere in Germany. So that's the animation. That was the bit I was aiming for eventually, to sort of just get a gist of what's happening. Might point out that in the UK, we're not allowed to launch pico balloons. of any sort. However, in America, they are legal, and I think they'll continue to be legal from what I've been reading. So these are very, very light balloons that can circumnavigate the planet 4 or 5 times using solar power, and they weigh literally just a few grams. Final point, because it's software, it really has to be documented well, I thought. So I ended up documenting all of this, which took quite a long time, but it also got rid of a lot of the bugs and issues that are that I had in the code. So with software, it's really got to be explained well, otherwise I think it's really hard to use. So that's a very, very quick run through of software that took 2 years to write, but I hope it gives you a bit of a flavor. And in terms of the motivation for this project for me, I think we're all aware that in construction there's hardware, and then there's hybrid, like system engineering, where there's firmware and hardware, and then there's pure software. In this case, it's a pure software project, which I was quite keen to develop. I found it really useful to get results quickly, because some of these projects you don't get the result until maybe 6 months in, but in this case, within a day or two, you start to see very simple results popping up. But it also highlighted early on that this is going to be a very complicated project technically, which strangely encourages me to look a bit further. At each stage, I was working through something new was developed and made to work, and this sort of visibility of progress kept me going. There's hundreds of steps to get this done, but it did keep me going. Technically, there's a lot of problems with the software that Microsoft provided, but we just had to live with that. So overall, it's lots of software debugging. The algorithms involved were actually really difficult, and there's lots of bugs in the Microsoft side of the world. But strangely, I found this really quite satisfying to resolve. It's sort of like, why do you climb a mountain, or why do you do things? Just the process of getting this to work was hard, but as a consequence, it was really quite a challenge and quite enjoyable. So it's really hard to explain, but I think people who build things maybe can get that at times. So for me, it ended up a hybrid effort. I learned lots of software, obviously. I also had to learn a lot about propagation theory and also the digital theory that was behind this whisper protocol, which turned out to be quite difficult. As mentioned earlier, it was never my plan to actually enter the competition, but halfway through writing the software, I became aware that the competition existed and there's this new category of software. But I was a bit concerned, was my entry going to be good enough in terms of software, given I've looked at previous competitions where the entries have been extremely impressive. Also, I only had 4 months until the deadline. And I thought about it, well, okay, so I decided to get it done and shipped for the competition. So now I had a hard deadline, and that was hugely useful actually to get things done. And also I noticed there was multiple criteria in the competition. So it wasn't just the complexity, it was also much wider than that. And I think that's going to be covered later on. And the overall process to enter was really quite straightforward. And clearly everybody was very welcome to have a go. In terms of the results that I achieved eventually at the end of the project, the tool became operational. I called it WAT, the Whisper Analysis and Traffic Tool. And I had to build a special website to download it, which is another project, which is a spin-off, so it's my second project, if you like. Ended up with 6,000 or 7,000 lines of code, which is a huge amount of software to develop. And if I started again, I wouldn't do it this way, I'd have to say. Currently, the website's at the top of several Google search engine hits, which is really quite nice to know. And there's been about 700 downloads by amateurs of the software to date. So that was a real unexpected bonus for me, that other folk actually want to use my software and play with it. Of the 700 downloads, I've only had 2 emails back saying thank you, and it's really good. They don't tend to get much feedback from the public, but other amateurs I know are using it. So fundamentally, the RSGB competition was the driver to get me going, really. And without that, I don't think I would have actually finished the project. I was going to say just a couple of words on writing computer software. It is my background in some senses, and I talk to a lot of people, and they often say, you know, these misconceptions. It's really hard to write code. I don't know where to start. It looks complicated. I really should have a go at trying this. It's not a miracle, really, as the slide suggests. It's actually really quite simple to get going with software. So if you've got a construction project challenge, you can start with something that's really simple and build up. Now, I kind of strongly recommend that start with a really simple project and build up. Flashing a light and turning it on and off, it is actually really quite surprising, and that it's quite enjoyable and you feel quite satisfied. Your partner and children may not be impressed, though, I found from experience. But going through this process, you do understand what's going on, and you get results step by step. And I just put up here a very simple Arduino example. There's many different ways of doing this sort of thing, but within 1 hour of starting, if you've bought the right board, you can wire up a flashing light and cut and paste the software, and you've got something running. And that's your first software project. And from that, you can quite quickly build up into, you know, whatever you want to build. I've mentioned Arduino here, there's Raspberry Pi, and there's also a lot of other options, which I'm sure you'll find. But I think in terms of the contest for the RSGB, I don't think it's all about winning, really. I think it's more about having some motivation to actually do something and get it over the line, and perhaps also share it with others if you're successful. But I would encourage, I've talked to others in this, regardless of the type of project or your age or your particular technical background, just to give it a go. Well, one clever idea that somebody came up with is to find an old project you've not really finished and rejuvenate that, and then perhaps submit that. And if you've got a deadline, it certainly helps you get going. So that's the story. As I was saying at the beginning, I hadn't planned to do this, but RSGB's competition made it happen, and I happened to win the prize, which was a huge surprise for me. So there's a lot of technical details in the talk. I've got some pointers there if you want to follow them up. But that's it. So thank you for listening, and I'll pass it back to David for any other comments.
Thank you very much, Colin. I mean, it's inspirational. I am one of these people, I'm afraid, who does think that software is complicated. When I see thousands of lines of code or even hundreds of lines of code, it just looks so complex. You said that you'd started the project. Firstly, I think we should understand, how much into software programming were you? Did you say you did that for a career?
Yeah, I was a software person. Early on, I did other jobs later, but my background is in software. But I kind of got away from that into the management side. And this sort of project got me back into, if you like, into the wiring, into the actual detail of software, which is quite challenging.
Yeah, because I was interested towards the end of your presentation there, you were saying about getting started and to start with something simple. But I must admit, I have started exactly what you were doing, actually, with an Arduino and a Sketch, I think they call the programs for Arduino. And it just, to flash an LED just doesn't sort of make you want to try really hard about it, does it? But I guess you mustn't be too ambitious. Is that what your message, do you think, to begin with?
Yes, it's a threshold. Once you flash the light, as it were, or something similar, turn the motor back and forward, you kind of know what's involved, and then you can sit back and think, well, I could do all of these things now, one way or another, and you can search on the internet to get various ideas and clues and then build up. I think it's just taking the first step and getting something operational. And then from there, you've got a vista of opportunities coming up. Okay,
and the other thing I've experienced with people I've worked with about software is it never seems to be finished. So I'm going to ask you now, are you now working on another version of what, or do you have any other projects in the pipeline?
Yeah, it's a good point. It's very hard to finish software because you can continue polishing it forever. I did some analysis. There's 6,000 lines of code in there, and because I was being pedantic about it and took my time, that there are no known faults with the code. There are many faults with the actual Microsoft product, VBA, which is just a nightmare to work with. But the actual project is working. So other than tweaking things to accommodate slight changes in the protocol, there's no further work planned. So what I was going to do as the next project is around Morse code. I'm getting back up to speed with Morse. And I thought, I watched an earlier talk on the T21 communication transceiver, which is an open source software defined transceiver. And it's got a vast amount of software in there to control the transceiver, including a section that decodes Morse automatically. So I thought I'd take that code out and put it in our standalone system and just play with that. And then after that, maybe look at some artificial intelligence or something along those lines to try and improve the Morse code decoding. So the next one is sort of a simple Morse code decoder to convert the Morse into text. It's been done before, but I just want to start there and see how that goes. So that's the thinking.
Well, that is really interesting. We'll all look forward to that. In fact, just by coincidence, there's a few comments coming online, and one of them was from Nathan W, who says that a flashing LED quickly becomes a Morse keyer with a little more effort. So there we are. Someone who foresaw what you were going to say. Lots of lovely compliments as well for you and all of everybody else. And as Nathan also says, hats off to anybody that releases their projects for the community, because that's one of the wonderful things about software, is that you can publish it free and other people share it. So thank you very much, Colin, for sharing your story tonight.
Yeah, thank you.
Very much indeed. Thank you. So thanks to Colin and Jenny and David. We may see them later on. If you've got any questions or points for them, they're still there. So do ask them now on YouTube or BATC. Now, all three of those people have been award winners in the RSGB Construction Competition over the last couple of years. So now let's find out a bit more about the competition from the General Manager of the RSGB, Steve Thomas, M1ACB. Good evening, Steve.
Yeah, evening, David, and everybody else on the call as well. It's really great to have the opportunity to join you all this evening and hear from David and from Jenny and from Colin firsthand why they got involved in the construction competition, and hear a lot more about their construction stories. The construction competition, we call it the construction competition, and it's been running for quite a few years. We call it that because it started off just as that, a construction, soldering and building competition. And it used to be held at the RSGB convention each year, with everybody bringing their projects to be judged. And that was great. Everybody who attended really enjoyed seeing the projects. But COVID changed that for a few years. And we started accepting entries online, photos and videos and things like that, and discussing with people online. And that meant that more people could enter and that they didn't have to travel to enter, and that we could accept a wider range of projects as well. And that's really how we started adding the extra categories. There was always a few categories, but we've added some extra ones. And we've seen some examples in those categories this evening, which is brilliant. Absolutely love it. So we certainly believe that construction includes experimentation and discovery as much as anything, but at whatever level suits you, right? So it's really about you and what you construct, or what the people who want to enter do. And it's all about doing practical things. Something that we're really convinced helps people explore new areas of amateur radio. And that really has to be a good thing, doesn't it? People discovering new things, new challenges, taking it a bit further than wherever they started from. So that's really what's behind the construction competition. And it just seems to be growing. And I know that we like to highlight some of these projects in Radcom as well as having them on tonight at 8. But nothing beats actually having people on here so people can hear from you directly why you got involved, what was the motivation, and be able to ask you questions as well live. So I'm really pleased that that everybody came on this evening. It's fantastic. We've expanded the categories now to include in the next competition, which is on the RSGB website. The categories now include beginners, construction excellence, innovation, software, antennas, and the new one this year we've added the most creative and/or elegant PCB design. So we just wanted to throw something extra in there, something new. So hopefully there's something in there for absolutely everyone. You don't have to say when you enter which category you're entering. It may be obvious, it might not be. You might think that something you're entering is, you know, a beginner's level, but it might actually be in the innovation category as well. You never know. So there's the judges decide. You're quite welcome to mark it as which category you think, but don't feel constrained. Right? If anybody wants to enter, don't feel constrained by the categories. Put something in, do whatever's been working for you, something you've enjoyed doing.
And tonight, can I just ask Steve as well, because I think our three guests that we've seen tonight, they've all designed their own thing, you know, creation. But of course, you can also use, I believe, enter a commercial kit. So you buy a commercial kit, and it's I think you said construction elegance or excellence is one of those criteria. So don't feel that you have to create something new yourself.
Absolutely. Yep. And people have entered, you know, kits that they've built before, and maybe they've modified them slightly, or they've just built something for the first time, and it's perhaps the first time they've done that sort of thing, and people need to be immensely proud of doing that, and just extending just a little bit, and it opens up maybe a whole new avenue of amateur radio to people.
So who can enter?
Sorry?
Who can enter?
Absolutely. Well, anybody can enter. The details are on the RSGB website. Okay, so we will, if people can go to rsgb.org/construction competition, that is the very best place to get all of the information. We offer cash prizes for each category, and the overall competition winner, which could come from any of the categories, also receives the Pat Hawker G3 VA trophy. And of course, this year that went to David Law for his 23 SEMS EME dish antenna. So there's a whole range of things. The closing date, incidentally, on there is the 1st of March. So people have got a little bit of time over the Christmas period to think about it, build it, decide. So a bit of time. That's really why we timed this for this time of year. Now, one other thing I'd like to mention, we're also very pleased to have been offered a new trophy for the beginners category, which this year, of course, was awarded to Jenny, M7JMY, for the emergency vertical antenna we saw. Now, this trophy was suggested to the RSGB by the family and friends of Gavin Nesbitt, MM1BXF. Gavin passed away just very nearly a year ago. And Gavin and I knew each other through the Cambridge Repeater Group and the CamHams, and we went on many trips to the Scottish Islands and with the group. We may have a photo of Gavin on the screen there. That's him operating GS3 PYE portable on the Isle of Arran. Now, I've got a trophy here now, so we've got the new trophy. So the Dan M0WUT from CamHams built the trophy hardware here, so the trophy's here, and Rob M0VFC wrote the firmware for the trophy. Now, firmware in the trophy, yes, there is some firmware in this trophy as well. Gavin was always building things and encouraging others to do the same, especially newcomers to amateur radio. And it was decided that an interactive trophy, let me just switch it on there and see if that, I need to work out where I need to hold this, that an interactive trophy would be very much appropriate. And that's based loosely on one of Gavin's rotator controllers. So here it is. And you can rotate the LEDs, trying to get it on the screen, there we go. You can rotate the LEDs left and right. I'm not sure if that shows all right on the screen, but there we go. So there's a PCB, and there's it's based on a Raspberry Pi Pico there, so it is programmable. And Jenny, this has got your name on the trophy there at the top as the first winner. It's actually engraved on a piece of green PCB, so we thought that was appropriate as well. And each year there will be another one around the side. All right, so this is now will be awarded for the beginners category of the construction competition every year. So there we go, Jenny. That's yours, passed on to all the winners each year. Now, it's probably going to be difficult to get it to you and back again, Jenny, in time for the next competition. But if ever you're passing Bedford, then you're more than welcome to drop in for a coffee and see the trophy until we award it to the next time.
Let's go.
Anyway,
I think we can go to Jenny now, Steve, actually, and just see, because I think, is that the first time you've shown that?
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. Yeah, it was constructed by the Dan and Rob. So and passed on to me, passed on to us at the convention actually. But there we go.
What do you think, Jenny?
I love it. Trophy? I've got a trophy.
You got a trophy, yeah.
You have to come by for a coffee and get a picture with it.
You are very welcome to. Yep, absolutely.
Marvellous. Thank you very much. Well, thanks again, and congratulations, Jenny, and all of you, in fact, for the prizes that you've won. So, Steve, construction competition. I think we've covered most things. Any RSGB member, how do they enter? We did show the link actually on the screen when you gave it to us.
Yep. Okay. You can email the short description of your entry to construction.competition@rsgb.org.uk. That's on the website, and all of the other instructions are on there as well. And we accept photos, a written description, a link to something, a video if somebody wants to make one as well. We'll take entries in a wide range, and it's normally judged by the Radcom editor and the technical editor as well, and we usually find a few other people to help them as well. So there's a wide range of people. It depends greatly on the type of entries we get in. So we try and find some judges that fit the entries we receive.
Yeah, excellent. And I think you mentioned it before, but the deadline is the 1st of March. So you've got about 2 months and a bit. And of course, you've got the Christmas period, which for many of us is the time when we've got a little bit of extra time to get involved with the project. And we're seeing those 3 wonderful people tonight who've all entered the competition. And actually, most of them, I think all of them, probably were doing it almost as an accident, an afterthought for entering the competition. But it did spur them on to finish it. So it's a great time to have a go, isn't it?
Yep. I think the range of things that we've seen from the 3 people shows that there is no fixed answer to what construction is. Right? There is all sorts of things that you can do, and we'd love to see any of it that people want to enter.
Yeah. Now, Steve, these are obviously all winning various trophies and awards, but all these trophies that the RSGB has, and there's an awful lot covering lots of different things, have to be managed by somebody, don't they?
They do. Nicely prompted, David. Our volunteer trophy manager, Jackie Goody, G6XSY, who's been the trophy manager for quite a number of years, has retired, and we really do need a new volunteer trophy manager. And this could either be an individual or a group of people who want to help us with trophy management. We have really 2 sets of trophies in the RSGB. We have the ones that are awarded at the AGM, and the construction competition ones are those. One of those. We've got a lot of other society trophies that are awarded at the AGM as well. And then we've got a whole nother set, which are the contest trophies that are awarded at the convention. And there is a very large number of those. So the trophies are housed away from a RSGB HQ. And really, we can move those to wherever the volunteer trophy manager could be. So we are really looking for a trophy manager to help us to carry on presenting these trophies and all the contest trophies. Jackie's a very hard act to follow, but if we're going to carry on awarding trophies like this, then we need a trophy manager to look after us and look after the trophies, frankly.
Okay, Steve. And if somebody's interested in watching this now, how can they get in touch? Can they contact you?
Yes, they can do. Yeah, there's a description of what the trophy manager does on the RSGB website. So rsgb.org/volunteers. There's something on there. They can drop me an email, gm.dept, GM department at rsgb.org.uk, or just give us a call. Whichever's easiest. Always ready for a chat.
Lovely, thank you, Steve. Actually, I had a question come in about the competition. Is RSGB membership the only prerequisite for entering? I'm not licensed yet, but I've been an RSGB member for a while.
Yes. Yep. You don't have to be licensed to enter.
Good. Yeah, and as we
I
said,
don't
you
see
don't.
that in the list of requirements.
No, and as I said, you can also it's the how well made something is made. So you could use
Yeah.
even a commercial kit to
Yeah.
have a go. Thank you. Well, because of what's happened today, we can't really let you go, being the general manager of the RSGB, without this complete coincidence that Ofcom today have published their conclusions on updating the amateur radio licensing network. I mean, this is the document. It's a very, very big document. Oh, you've got the, yes, 103 pages, I think there is on there.
There is. I've got the summary one here, the 4-page version, which is just here as a prompt.
It's a quick read, isn't it?
You've got the big thick tome there, have you?
Some of it, yes, some of it. I mean, the RSGB and indeed this program Tonight at 8, we covered it a lot in the early years, the early months rather of this. In June this year, we covered a lot of this, and tried to explain a lot of the proposals to everybody, and lots of people have resolved. But today, the Ofcom have basically said what their decisions are. So just quickly overview from you, the general manager of RSGB, what's the general feeling from the society on behalf of other amateurs?
Oh, thanks for putting me on that spot, Dave. Well, first of all, it's been an incredibly busy day, right? Because Ofcom announced this morning, so everybody's been reading and flicking through the information that Ofcom's provided. I would encourage everybody that's watching and every amateur to go and read, as we encouraged everybody to submit their thoughts on the consultation. Then I think it's absolutely imperative that every radio amateur goes and has a look at what the decisions are. But Ofcom have published that today, so they've published what they're proposing to take forward. And their timetable for implementing them as well. There's 3 phases, which you can see. I mean, if you don't want to read the whole document, then really go and read the 4-page summary, and that will give you a very good overview of what's planned. As well as publishing the results today, Ofcom have also started. They've published a general notice, which is the start of the process to vary everybody's licenses to match what's in the consultation results. And then you have until, everybody has until the 22nd of January, I'm just reading it, to make representation to Ofcom about that notice of variation proposal. It's important to realise that's not an extra consultation. The consultation has happened, and everybody had the opportunity to comment on all of it. The opportunity to make representation could be about your individual case. So where they're proposing to change and vary your individual license, you can make representation to Ofcom until the 22nd of January on that particular topic. And once that happens, they will then issue the variation to the license based on the responses they have. But the document itself covers a whole range of things, and I would really encourage everybody to go and read it. If only 4 pages, I think that's well worth doing with a coffee. The next thing you do, the next time you have a coffee, read the Ofcom response. Okay,
Steve, thanks. I know it is putting you on the spot, but it's been new for all of us today, less than 12 hours. So it's been, but thank you very much for your taking it, and thanks for all the work that you and many other of your colleagues did on this to educate and help and encourage us all to reply to this consultation, because I think it's probably going to be the biggest change to our hobby in a generation. I think it was Murray that said that before.
Yeah, absolutely true as well. And we're already working on what we can put in the next edition of RADCOM. Lots of meetings and calls today. But if we just look at maybe the high level topics, so if we look at phase 1 changes, changes to the call signs and the suffixes and the power levels and the use of airborne use, and the more enabling the flexibility within the licenses, so other people you'd be able to manage other people operating your call sign. That and the construction things that I think you mentioned earlier in the call, David. It makes it absolutely clear that foundation licensees can construct their own equipment. And that's very relevant to this evening's call, isn't it? So there's some really wide-ranging changes in this document.
Indeed.
Coming soon,
as you say, and lots of the chat as well that you see, as well as all the questions and comments about the wonderful presentations we've had tonight. It's understandably on a day like this, there's been lots of chat about it on the YouTube chat and BATC as well. Oh, yeah. Anyway, many thanks to Steve for joining us, and also, of course, to David, Jenny and Colin for their presentations. Thank you all very much. Congratulations on your awards, and thank you for inspiring others to have a go at the construction competition and just building something. So thanks very much to all of you. And that's thanks also to the team, of course, who helped put this series of Tonight at 8 together behind the scenes. Now, as we've mentioned, the RSGB annual construction competition is now underway, and the competition is open to all RSGB members and is judged online, as you heard, so you don't need to send your projects away, and you've got until 1st of March 2024 to enter. For full details, once again, here is that link, rsgb.org/construction-competition, or see the latest RADCOM for full details. And in next month's Tonight at 8 webinar, we'll be meeting the team and finding out more about the World Radio Sport Team Championship, or WRTC, which is coming to the UK in 2026. If you'd like to see details of our future webinars or watch recordings of previous programmes in the series, please visit rsgb.org/webinars, where you can also send us comments and feedback. And if you subscribe to the RSGB's YouTube channel, you'll be notified of all upcoming Tonight at 8 webinars, as well as other new videos and presentations from the Society on a wide range of amateur radio topics. Until next time, this is David G7URP signing off and clear. Bye-bye.